Matt, we're just gonna start with the top that they did.
Yeah, and what I'll do is I'll just once we confirm that we have. We're good on audio?
Yep.
Okay. So I know it's been a little over a month since we last had this conversation, and so what I'd like to do is take the board back through the policy itself. We had kind of three major discussion items. We had discussed what should be the title of this policy. The board had discussed an interest in having a preamble to the policy, so I've drafted one that the board can review and make comments on today. And then there was some kind of consensus around the language in the policy and making it more plain language, and some comments around how the superintendent's interpretation language was actually more accessible. So made some changes to the language of the policy. So we can walk through that, and then there were some specific comments that came up during the board study session around some of the indicators, how we'd monitor those, and so then we can go back through and either indicate what changes have been made or if no changes were made at this time, kind of why that is at this point. I'm not recommending we don't move forward with those changes. So I'll just take us through the policy. And so as far as the title, we had discussed having it life and global citizenship skills. There was much discussion around the concept of citizenship. And then I'll give the board a few minutes to read the preamble and to look at the changes around kind of each of the sub policy areas to see if that kind of meets the interests of being a little bit more accessible language.
Any comments, feedback? Chris?
First, just a editing. In the second paragraph of the preamble, after the strike through, it says lead a productive morning, and it lines up reading and make responsible decisions that lead a productive morning. Lead to on more meaningful level. 3.4, acknowledge, empathize, and treat others with different cultures and or identities with respect. I don't know what to call it. The 12-year-old in me immediately jumped to, so I don't have to treat people from my culture with respect. So I'm good with different cultures and or identities, but treat people with respect, including those from other cultures. And I'll pause there so that someone else.
It's just a comment. I just wanted to acknowledge that. doing the work to put this into very plain English. Appreciate it.
So 3.1, self-awareness is, I think I get the idea, but it's mixed bag because identifying your emotions is a different category than identifying your strengths and areas of growth. And splitting those into different clauses would, I mean, honestly, identify your emotions, to me, it's more like, I don't know if it's identify your passion, but self-management really gets into the regulation of emotions and behaviors, which feel like identifying your emotions falls under that. This is one where I expect other people.
I feel like you need to be aware of them before you do.
That's the thing, I'm okay with that, but again, it's something where the management, maybe it's identifying emotions along with the self, identify emotions, right, and regulate emotions from bases or
Make a note of that one, because I think it'd be good for us, since we were trying to build these based on the state SEL, so
Yeah.
we can go look at that.
And I don't mind disagreeing with the state. Sorry.
I don't have a problem with how it's written. You raise an interesting point, but
Well, and there's the other piece of this that as we go, that we had we talked about the indicators. We discussed not using grid. The indicator that was initially proposed, we decided that wasn't appropriate. So I have a replacement indicator, but it definitely was with 3.2, which is
I guess part of I feel like identify their emotions. Emotions, the first one in the 3 items list. You wind up with a naive parent reading this and identify their emotions. It's supposed to apply through K-12. Isn't that something that should have been dealt with very early? It can derail the conversation. Where I think identifying strengths and areas for growth is the real important part of this that people need to appreciate that we're asking our people. Not saying identifying their emotions is unimportant, but I do think it derails the focus on strengths. So Eric, you're looking for a conversation. Go for it.
go ahead, Mark, go ahead.
I'm thinking the last phrase that you just used, the idea of identifying the strengths and weaknesses.
See what the last part is.
Right.
Yes.
Identify your strengths and weaknesses in your ability to control or regulate your own emotions. See what I'm going?
I
couple them together.
I'm just worried that leads into it's always have to be about emotion. I mean, there's strengths and weaknesses that can be academic strengths that have nothing to do with it.
You know, what Frank, I think that you get it interfere with your academic.
Oh, I'm not saying it can't interfere. I'm just saying with the strengths and weaknesses, it's a superset of emotion. And putting emotion first goes down on the strengths and weaknesses.
so just
Yeah.
it's maybe a little bit hard. It's on page 17 is the state benchmarks, and so there are 3 components under this this standard. So that go beyond, and this is part of the challenge, right? With essentially having policy that somewhat summarizes that. Sort of that might just be helpful for us to look at and see if we can.
Yeah, this one I'm going to argue with the state.
I think it's appropriate to include it. I think it's an attribute we want our students to have. And so I think measuring it as a result is important.
I'm not saying measurement is inappropriate. I'm just really worried that by putting emotion first, strengths and weaknesses are broader than emotion. And then if emotion is the first thing in this list, then we don't talk about all the other strengths and weaknesses. You should do whatever.
Would
Changing
the order satisfactory.
I don't mind keeping emotion in there, but emotion can't be the first thing, because then it winds up being only about emotion. Our strengths and weaknesses, we want to talk about
automatically.
And then we will fail other things.
So, yeah, you're not gonna play to your strengths.
Right.
So, I don't know.
Next, that's 3.2.
I'm indifferent as to the order. But I
There's
I do
some
say it's
indicators.
All right.
Anybody else?
So if emotions doesn't come first.
Yeah, so Dr. Holmes was asking how I'd modify it. I mean, I think we can change the order. I don't know that they're listed in any sort of, the concern is that the order essentially lends primacy to emotions that overshadows the others. We certainly will be, there's a lot of work around emotions and if we think about social emotion learning emotions is part of it. So
Well, the problem here is that the state, I'm not sure I disagree with the state, it's just that there was an attempt to make things fit. The state called it out in such a way as the ability to identify their emotions, personal assets, areas for growth. And their list, for some reason, doesn't give me the notion that only talk about strengths and weaknesses. And I don't know why, but it does.
What if you clarify the three categories? So it's identifying their emotions, their individual strengths and areas for growth. Do you know what I mean? Like emphasizing each of those as separate entities,
Right.
using a couple more words. Does that make feel better?
Okay, it does. I mean, honestly, somehow it just wound up being something where
Because it almost
emotions
implies
seem
that
to apply to its asset class.
Yeah.
I guess I'm okay with the policy giving primacy to emotional intelligence. Maybe this is because I just spent a week on a 5-year-old. That is the strength. It's like
That's
front
right.
center in my mind right now. So
I need to keep that in mind, but
my own prejudice is on the table there.
and this may be, when I'm looking at the state language, is a little bit more robust. This may
Yeah.
be a place where
borrowing it.
too succinct,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And the language that we have, the state standard
Yeah.
here fills that out a little
The
bit.
Maltese really does, and I don't disagree with that. So maybe it's just my personal misreading of it, but I guarantee there will be other emotionally unintelligent individuals like myself who would read that this way.
So you go back to the state language.
Yeah.
And I believe one of the concerns with the state language is it uses very educationese type like assets.
First line.
Yeah.
Like that's a word that is very, like, I get it, I understand it, but that's.
You think
To a
You
parent,
could use personal strengths
right.
and areas for growth. I think what we had on page 3 here, we set emotion strengths and areas for growth. So is it adding personal strengths?
Yes,
Sure.
Yeah.
that'll separate it out for you from emotion. It
Yeah.
adds a word in there and gives you, now you have 3 separate things.
Say identify individual emotions, personal strengths, and areas for growth, but does that,
I don't think we need individual. Right, the category is self-awareness.
Their emotions.
Yeah.
And I think Director Woodbury, right? With dealing with your young children, right? That's not mine. And Director Carlson, kind of thinking about shouldn't we have been there? But when prior to the
Oh, I'm
meeting,
not
was
saying
looking,
that regulating
was certainly
those
looking
is
back at our healthy youth survey data this year and looking at, as we move through different developmental stages too, we experience different emotions and have to. I have a 13-year-old, so we've got a lot of emotions in the house right now that are just very different, right?
Yeah.
They're very different for him, so I think that's the piece of it, and the part of our work will be working with the Niceness Estate has developed some of those development, like what does this look like when you're dealing with a 10th grader versus what does it look like when you're dealing with a 2nd grader? Because they're different conversations in different emotional contexts.
I like adding a little more detail, but the other piece that would actually break it out is just identifying their emotions, identifying their individual strengths, identifying their areas of growth. That emphasizes that these subplots apply to the student rather than to the emotions. So. Yeah. I'm not repeating it.
Anything else in 3.1? Anyone? Let's go through these.
That's the preamble. We didn't, if we're going in order, was there any
I thought it-
feedback on the preamble?
I thought it was good.
Yes. It's concise enough and it's readable by someone who doesn't speak education.
Yeah,
I guess if we're second paragraph after grow after critical is between critical and social, but anyone any comments on 3.2?
So actually, just in general, on the indicators coming through, are we doing just the wording of the policy?
I don't go ahead.
Okay, we have the groups of 3, 5, and 6, 12. Is there a way to do 6 through 8 and 9 through 12, because those are distinctly different?
So there's work that will need to be done for us to do that. So right now in the Panorama platform, they're reported out 6/12. So I can go in and look at our spring survey, which actually was just released, and we actually asked these questions. So I have access to be able to look at what does it look like for 6/12. For us to break them out in some other way, what we'll have to do is essentially build our own dashboard, extract all the data out of Panorama, and repurpose it ourselves. So it can be done. It's just
Panorama just create that filter pretty easily if we ask them.
well, that will be the work that we're going to do is bring it in, because then we can also we can associate some other things that we are not able to because there's only so much information on students that they have that we'll be able to associate.
So I guess what I would say is I think it would be highly valuable to do so, because even looking at the Healthy Youth Survey, as you stated, it is strikingly different 6 to 8 and 9. And I'm assuming even our 9, 10 is strikingly different potentially than our 11 and 12 graders, just as they age through that initial differently. So it'd be great to be able to have data that way.
And one of the things that we'll lose, we'll have to kind of play with it just because we'll lose some of the benchmarking as we pull it. So for right now, we have 6/12. We would be able to report on that. In the future, once we build our version, then we could be able to come back.
So I would highly encourage pressuring Panorama to create a filter in the report to allow us to do that. That is not hard coding on their part.
That would see what so it'd be easier for us to do data. We just haven't built it, and so, but for reporting this year, we'd be able to.
I just think it could then also give a percentile capacity and ensure it benefit other areas. And that just holds through all of these, is what I would say.
Yep.
So it's what I think.
3.2 looks good to me. Anyone have any comment?
So when we speak of indicators, we say annual trend. I'm assuming you want the trend increasing?
Yeah, well, that gets to, so we had the conversation, Director Choi and Director Carlson had made some comments around what is the most appropriate way to kind of represent and think about growth. We had, in the way we've been monitoring is using a 4-year trend line, and that was problematic. So I talked with Tim Krieger about his recommendations, and actually it's on, I just included kind of this addition on page 7, additional considerations where, and I have that there in red. So these were comments that the board had made that I just wanted to capture based on conversation. So what Tim was proposing is, instead of labeling 4-year trend, is we just do an annual trend, and we can actually report a data table so you can see the previous years. And we would do that in the appendix to show that. So we could essentially monitor kind of year over year, not necessarily worry about a 4-year trend line, but we just would share the data to the board. But what was last year's results versus this year's results? And the more consistent, the longer that we're doing this, the more data set we'll.
It's using a line of best fit.
Yes, yes.
So while we're on that topic, tables are nice, but to rapidly communicate information, just show the graph going back to me. Got it.
So Tim was.
Yeah, I think he was saying we could do both. We could
Yeah.
show the trend. We could show the trend line, and then we'd also have the table. Not just we put that in the appendix.
Yeah. Because it is an interesting thing. Some of our, we suffer from a system that occasionally switches horses on us. And then we have discontinuities in our data. How do you compare this year's to last year's? No specific, you just know this, you've seen. But it's something where if you've been on the same horse for 7 years, there's no reason that the last 4 years are the only years that are meaningful. It could be something where the long-term trend becomes much more apparent when you've got 7 years. So I'm definitely behind, show it back to whatever the last discontinuity was. Yeah.
So I'm assuming he can show the actual data points and he can put in a trend. If he wants the trend line and line of best fit, he can overlay that with the actual data.
Yeah. I would believe so.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
And
Because I think that's what is being asked for, is the actual data, not the trend.
yeah, the trend, the slope of the linear trend is not particularly meaningful until we get 4 data points. But you've got 7 data points, then it starts getting interesting.
Yep.
So, just show it, you know. Seriously.
Yeah, I'd say the graph gives one component and you have it, and the table gives a different.
Yes, you can get onto it.
I mean, the graph gives me the visual that I can quickly see what's happening. The graph tells me, do I really care how much of the increase I'm seeing here? That's dependent as to what you have over there. On the axis, so.
Which brings me to my favorite book ever, How to Lie with Statistics. And it's all about changing your axis skills. So. All right.
Any,
Yeah, so I just want to reiterate a concern that I have. So for example, for 3.1 and 3.2, we talked about 55% of students were reporting positively, and that's within the 90th percentile nationwide. But are we really happy with only 5% of our student body saying that they are self-aware? Or, 3.2, 46% in grades 3 to 5. Is that really, are we content with that level of our student body saying that they're able to self-manage? Less than half of our students. So I feel like I get why those percentages are in there because we're using nationally normed data for these questions, but I don't know that that should be our goal. Therefore, I don't know that it should be the goal we set for ourselves.
So absolutely, and so I think there's a combination of how we look at it, is if the idea is that in the next year, our goal is to be able to hit into this, and then you can always be increasing that goal as you go forward to where it should be where you want it. But to say you're gonna suddenly get 90% of your students starting at 55%, or this one, I don't even know where it is, 2.1, I don't have the data that. For instance, in 3.2, you said 46% in fall of 2021. Right, which was in the 45th night. So our goal is the 90th percentile, right, across the board starting.
Yeah.
And then you'll ideally should take that.
yeah, I think so. And this is the challenge and the reason I asked Panorama for what would be the 90th percentile target, because it varies. 75% on one question bank is really good. It's really positive, and 55% on this first one, emotional regulation, is that would put us in the 90th percentile of all school districts in the country. And so part of that is in the design. So when I go in and look and try to understand, and like we're trying to diagnose what's going on, is also looking at there's a middle response which is not considered favorable. It is usually like they're listed in the things, but so I always look to see how many of our students are in that middle response and how many are in the two responses that we considered unfavorable. Because that also tells us something, that if we have a large portion of students who are unfavorable versus maybe a smaller portion, and a lot, generally see with our high school kids or teenagers, high levels of that kind of shrug the shoulders. I'm just going to give you the middle response to things, but sometimes it's very unfavorable, right? And that raises some other things. So yeah, I agree. It doesn't sound like a good goal to set as saying 55% of our kids will respond favorably, but given the instrument that would Panorama, that would be good goal, and I can pause here a bit. We look at let's go look at 3.2. So we asked about self-management. And you can, what we've seen in the question items that we've been doing with Panorama thus far is we move, it's a really exceptional year if we've moved maybe 5% percentage points. And so you can see the gap that we currently have around self-management to what would be considered 90th percentile, 78%. That's represents several years of consistent positive growth for us to get there. If 3 to 5% would consider pretty statistically.
Chris, me,
I think
sorry, John,
Yeah,
John, Chris.
I think it's on this topic.
It is.
Go for it.
So my wonder is, what part of this is, do we want to set the results up so that it's, that we're meeting our targets, or do we want to set aspirational targets? And so one way to do this would be to set a percent of students and a percentile goal, so that you actually separate those out, as opposed to, so that the percentile can be your aspirational, where the percent is more of your kind of practical, what you're working towards in the short term, so that those are being updated. So you'd be reporting both. That would be another way to do this. Now, we're essentially setting it up so that the report is never in full compliance. And
Well, we're looking at reasonable progress, but we
Correct.
go with results. So you just sort of gave a parameter for reasonable progress of a 5% growth per year. And now where that hits you to that percentile is another. But I do think if we look at our results one, we do report both a percentage as well as a comparative with other districts, as opposed to a percentile here. So I think it's reasonable.
I think you said 5% was exceptional.
5% is exceptional.
Oh, right, what is there?
5% is what we consider exceptional, and what Panorama shared with me is if you see, you see 3%, that's they consider that's what we have to generally see is a 1 to 2% kind of modulation, and our hope and a goal would be to, by intentionally focusing on these things, what we're just communicating to throughout the organization, that this is valuable work that needs to take a level of seat, and so to see marked improvement time as we build our programming to support these objectives.
But I would definitely agree, 55% is not the ultimate goal.
Yeah,
That
it
is
is not.
our goal to be every student.
I have a follow-up.
I got it.
Go ahead.
So this is, sorry, I've got a little bit of experience, you two don't yet. An honest set of 13-year-olds, an honest set of tweens answering this question could not possibly get to 9%. When they get attacked by puberty, there is emotion. They have no idea that it's even hitting them. They don't know they're feeling it sometimes, but it's there. And you're like,
to be fair,
okay.
we've all gone through
We've been.
puberty.
It's different when you see it as kids. As the kid, I suffered puberty too. And so it's something where I'm wary of setting an aspirational target that is to some, I mean, honestly, 55% middle school, I would consider not unreasonable as an aspirational target. But there are other times where it might be different targets. So, but this is something where the difference between the aspirational target and an absolute number and a relative number. We're doing better than the average district in the US on the same instrument. We're doing something right. I'm okay with going the relative 90%. So,
But if the result is not giving you an accurate
I want it to be a meaningful 90%.
portrayal
Yeah.
of the actual student body, so you're saying that 55% is not necessarily reflective of the actual number of students that feel like they're self-aware or they're.
No, I'm just saying that
self-managed.
if kids are being
Then-
honest when they report, a lot of them should be reporting that they aren't good at it. And so, it gets back to
I
the
don't
old,
think I don't think we're asking them to report that they're like experts at this, but for their age, whether or not they're capable.
well, and that's where it's gonna be interesting interpreting the data.
It's not
The
just
survey,
the tool,
yeah.
finessed enough to be able to do
Yeah.
the development.
I'm not sure.
So there's a lot of, yeah, so this is a great, it's a great debate. So I'm currently just looking at, because we just did this, we did this survey with our students, so that we might be able to report out to the board this year. So our, I'm looking at grades 6 to 12, emotion regulation. There are, so I'll just take one question. I can only see question distribution, but so here's one question. The first question is, when you're feeling pressured, how easily can you stay in control? We want overwhelmingly the vast majority of our students to be able to say, yes, I can. 12% of our students say they can handle that extremely easily. 34% said quite easily. Those will be considered favorable responses. And so the way it's set up is, so that's 47% of our students say respond favorably to that item. 34% of our students say somewhat easily. So that's kind of the shrug, right? Like they can do it. 14% slightly easily and 5% not easily at all.
Where does eye rolling come in?
The eye roll, yeah, that's the 30, well, or they don't. They don't do it.
But the middle response is considered negative.
The middle response is counted as a negative. And
It's not counted as a positive.
it's not counted as a positive.
It's a neutral, it's probably more.
But as we're thinking about targets, the 55% that Director Choi was just referring to,
Gotcha.
that would not be considered a pro-social response, if you will.
So if we wanted to include it, right, which is not what Panorama does, but then, so you're looking at so you're looking at essentially 19% of our students responded clearly unfavorably. Right, if you take that. So, and again, we may have some more, as we built our own system in doing this, we may be able to report out more broadly some data that we are right now, which would be essentially a heavily manual process to have to go pull all of these.
To Director Choi's question, actually, the ideal here would be able to follow a student over time and seeing that as we go through our system, they get better. Unfortunately, that's literally data I guarantee you can't get out of that system. It would be the right thing to do with the data set. Hey, go ahead.
Agree with John and Chris, what I think I heard them both say, which is that for all of our end results, the indicators I want to see are meaningful indicators that are achievable. So the targets here work for me. But also for all of our end results, I do think it's worthwhile to have, if it's an aspirational goal, it may not be a target, but an aspirational goal. But it could be part of the report too. So that's true for results 3, results 2, results 1. So I'm comfortable with these as the targets for which we're monitoring district performance. But to Director Choi's point, yes, we would like to see that be much higher for all.
And ideally, the trend would be at 3%.
Oh, yes, right. Well, if we set the target, this is why I like having a target that actually matters. If you set the target at each year for the right point, then if you're hitting
Well,
that
but
target,
the 90th percentile is total.
correct.
So that's actually a 15% growth in some of these right now.
Yeah.
Which is not likely based on what was just said in relation to the data.
Yeah,
So therefore, maybe a 5% growth. If you want to see a trend that's going up, so I'm saying what's reasonable to expect within a year.
So just
Yeah,
to give a
fair.
perspective on
Yeah.
the gap that we currently have between 90, the targets that are listed here in our grades 6 through 12, our elementary students respond more favorably. So they're either be meeting in 2 areas and just barely shy of 2 areas. So our range would be we're as close as 5% on one indicator, and as far away as 15% on the other indicator. Most of them more are closer to that 15%. So we've got work to do just to meet the targets as they're listed.
So, Matt, is it possible, since we've had so much discussion around here of the nuances of what is meant by, what panorama numbers mean and how they compare. It's almost like we need to have a clip notes, if you will, of what the hell panorama is trying to say at certain points. If 55% is great, the rest of the public would say just what Kalea said. No. And there has to be some way of being able to have on paper, on screen, whatever, interpretation that's meaningful. I mean, if I'm reading this as a parent, and I haven't already closed it down, I'm thinking it's like we're talking on both sides of the mouth. That we're trying to create a survey that makes us look good and feel good that hasn't really told us anything. We can aspire to a new goal, but is that goal really going to be helpful? And I think you probably have higher compliance rates, responses in elementary kids, because elementary students want to please. You get middle school, that kind of disappeared. And by high school, forget about it. I don't know. That's the problem I have with Panorama. It doesn't translate well to the regular person. And I don't want to come back to bite us, to be quite frank. I want them to understand why it's at this level, why we're asserting this level, as opposed to say, well, we have really a low standard for our students. And I hate to create work for you, but.
Well, so it's really, I think, it's leading into the percentile. Like our goal is to be, for these indicators to be in the 90th percentile,
Right.
Higher for all school districts in the country.
And in many ways, that's what I think, right now, the way it's phrased is inverted.
Yeah.
If you start with 90th percentile nationally, and then that's like saying 90th percentile nationally for your RDA and potassium, and then stating what 90th percentile is. Because people don't know what's good and what's bad for these metrics, but if you lead with 90%, that makes it easier. There will still be concerns which are not illegitimate. I mean, kids should be on the world to be getting better. To me, part of it is, I know this is hard. We've got a data set that's kind of sparse. Ideally, we'd be able to say not just that there's a trend, but there's a significant improvement year on year in these numbers. That's hard to say. Is 3% likely to be significant? I'm pretty sure 1% change isn't going to be significant. I have no idea if 3%, which would be going in the right direction, would actually be a significant statistical change. But I would certainly like to explore that possibility. So.
So you're talking about 1 to 3% and 1 to 5%, and 5% being throw a party has been so successful. I don't think I would understand that with these gradations of increases, how significant a 3 is. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
If I see, well, you've done it by 3 points, well, gee, I could have done that standing on my head. I don't. But and I think that we need to be able to somehow have an interpretation of that also, that, you know, when you, as you look at improvements, here's what is statistically relevant. Is that, you know, what does this mean? See where I'm going? I doubt very seriously that these folks really took that in statistics classes. I also, one last point, I would like us to push Panorama, be able to have a comparison. You know, it's not now, but in the future, of like-sized districts. Because comparing our district, my hometown district back in Oklahoma, come on. It's not fair to either one of them. It's not fair to our parents because they have their expectations perhaps. Just think it'd be very great on Panorama's part, intelligent, if they could do it. I can't see why. Dazzle, that's all they want. That might dazzle us. It might give you something more to work with, to be quite frank, because you're comparing it to New York City, to Chicago, and then to Lake Washington. That's a whole different deal. And if you're, you know, some of these school districts have as many kids in the entire district as we have in a high school, or less.
They have some, we have some ability to do some slicing, although it looks like they have changed that.
Of course.
I hate that.
So, because I'm not able to access the slicer that allowed me to change this.
I
Let's
just,
be nice to the boss.
yeah, it's one of the things we can suggest to Panorama, if they do this more, have a separate set breakout.
Okay, Director Belizer and Chris, do you have more? Okay.
And so as I walk through the indicators, they're all based off of Panorama. So the question I would ask is an additional piece to potentially consider exploration is focus groups with our students to ask these things. To sort of get to some of those questions a little more in depth. Might be interesting as another indicator piece. There's not really a target associated with that as much as sort of a deep dive piece. Understand their experiences.
Yeah, so I think we brought that up study session. That Panorama is the sole source of science or not. And there are limitations with the voluntary survey as your own data source.
So I'd love to see that be explored as possibilities to how that can inform and provide depth behind the results, especially the different age groups. But probably the most importantly at our seniors, right? On, you know, where are they at in this piece of regards to these. It's gaining a lot from them.
Do you see that as part of monitoring,
I do.
or do you see that as a supplement to? And then how would we capture that as data?
Oh, fair. I actually see a focus group could be, because you might capture things very distinctly different that give insight into your data through that focus group. And it's a very because it's a qualitative, and you're more looking for perception and sort of repeated things that go through there. I don't think you can set goals in that setting because actually it's more exploratory. So maybe perhaps, you look like you have something you want to add to that. So.
Well, nothing substantive at this moment other than, so I think there's a couple of things. We're intentionally trying to do some work to really organize and around our staff, families, and student data so that we're able to get tight alignment with what our goals are. And then there's the building out, see the next step is really kind of building out a regular process for us to understand and unpack some of the data. So that I'm looking at some of the student data. There's curiosities that I have, but how do we learn the lessons? Well, you're not going to, this just points to areas to look to be curious about, but actually having conversations and doing some qualitative experience alongside that. So I see that as being part of it. How do we continue to forward and actually use this meaningfully with an organization. But then as far as a monitoring standpoint, yes, I would completely agree. I think that this is not, this would be the starting point, not the end point of how we monitor R3. And so I'm in the process of exploring what are some ways in which we might be a qualitative process, but that actually could codify it in such a way that that could be represented but I don't, those inquiries are kind of happening right now. It's something that I could bring back to Dr. Holman and say this is making a recommendation.
So I do think that's the whole piece. Now, it's a linkage concept. It's how do you give us a additional framework in which to look at that data with?
I'm curious but skeptical.
Good depth of information through. And open-ended comments. It's the other place.
Chris, the mark.
Okay, so in 3.1, looking at the suit's interpretation, it's pretty familiar language from Appendix B. Yeah. So page 3. But I'm really curious. Maybe this is revealing my lack of understanding of SEL, because under indicator, you've got emotion regulation, which addresses the first bullet point. But awareness of personal and collective identity, which I would like to know what the heck that is, the state wrote that. And what we're going to do about it is even more interesting to me. Because the indicators definitely do fit with my original concern that strengths and weaknesses was only in the context of emotion. Because then the indicator would get to go through around emotion. But so two things. The first is, where are the indicators for the second two clauses? This personal and collective identity. And what the heck is personal and collective identity? How are we going to measure that? I think the state threw a bunch of words at us that mean something to them, but I'm going to have a very hard time explaining this to the average constituent. I mean, personal and collective identity, I can see that turning into someone coming in and asking us, so we're going to teach white kids about how to be white. This is fraud. Okay.
Mark, I just have a clarifying question based on Chris. My understanding is that for the indicators we have right now, that we're limited to what's on camera, right? Is that right?
If we're wanting to use benchmark research questions, right, then yes, we could go and develop our own to try to satisfy that. But that was what I used as a starting point. Yeah. What's in their system that really to the state SEL students.
Because we talked about it last time. I echo Chris's concerns that we're not measuring everything in every policy. Right? It is what it is right now. Sorry, Mark.
All right.
Okay.
I'm trying to put on a student's head, and especially as they go into middle school, high school, that's a time frame when all of a sudden the openness that you had as a pre-adolescent closes by day. And my concern is if you have a student who has been invited more often than not to the counselor's office, or who has had some difficulties in one area or another, are they more likely to try and make the outcome of their survey more positive? Because I could see them saying, gee, if I answer this wrong, I'm going to end up in the counselor's office one more freaking time. I think it's a suspicion of a teenager. I don't know. Am I being too
I think that's why Director Troy was saying, really, is this all the data we're going to use? And I think the reset on results 3 was because of the data we were pulling. We were trying to taking data that was already in the system and trying to apply meaning to it.
Okay.
I think this attempt is to say, okay, is this a baseline of data that can give us some level of understanding, albeit not perfect, and then we can continue to build from there rather than just trying to manipulate the old R3, because we had some data elements that we were interpreting as student behaviors and student outcomes that I think were more adult behaviors and adult outcomes. And so I think this gets us closer to understanding student outcomes in R3, but definitely not, this is not a finished product. I think this would be a few years to get it to where we want as we develop additional surveys for other stakeholders. As we find data in the system that we think directly ties to these, applying that as well.
Well, I think too, once the panorama becomes a familiar tool to students, the likelihood of that thought going through their mind of saying, oh, crap, if I get the wrong one, I'm dead meat. Then I'm going to be dead meat at home.
Yeah, and I think for our purposes, so we have 23,000 students that have the opportunity to take this survey this spring. And so, will any single one of them, I mean, there's probably going to be variation, kids, depending on kids from day to day. I mean, even as adults might answer differently based on that. So I think we look at it as that this is a snapshot of time of tens of thousands of kids experiencing, kind of looking at collectively, and recognize it. I completely agree. I think this is just trying to give us a new baseline, a new starting point, to then build off of, and hopefully not to be just relying on the survey for how the board uses policy.
Any other comments, questions on the sub policies?
I guess maybe I congealed my concern around this one. The state gave us demonstrates awareness of personal and collective identity, encompassing strengths, areas for growth, aspirations, and cultural and linguistic assets. It is absolutely unclear to me what identity has to do with any. And I feel like it opens us up to a tremendous number of challenges in explaining why identity is important in assessing your strengths.
So are you saying rather than using the term identity, just call out what we're talking about?
Call out the strengths. Don't talk about it as through an awareness of personal collective identity. I mean, my personal strengths, if you open it up to your collective identity is part of your strengths, you are opening us up to a world of culture wars. I don't see that as a productive phrase to put into our system. It will cause much more harm. It's about students finding their strengths through their personal identity. That is fraught.
I agree with Chris, but for a different reason. I just don't think it fits, that interpretation fits into the words that are in the policy. So it's not part of the policy. The policy does not call for an awareness of one's. It could make that policy, but I just don't think that those words, I don't think that's an interpretation.
Matt, does it come from, see if I can walk to where I think it's coming from. I think it's the idea that if we take race, viewing it as an asset, and so in that, the personal identity is part of a person's strength because they're bringing something that someone else may not have because of their background, their ethnicity, their traditions, and viewing that as a strength. Is that kind of, that's exactly what it is. Okay. What are the data that students are responding to? Do you have the questions specific for? Well,
And here's one. So this was, so for There's not, I'll just say, there's not a good indicator for self-awareness that is currently available in Panorama. So what we're proposing is using motion regulation, which is a little bit of this assumption that if you can identify how you would regulate your emotion, then you're able to identify that you have an emotion. So that was about as close as I was able to get in looking, working with Panorama and looking at essentially their survey banks that would fit this. We initially looked at GRIT because that was more around the kind of growth and aspiration piece, but then after the conversation, I think wisely rejected that as an indicator.
So I wonder if in the indicator, we actually say exactly what you just said. Where we can modify the policy, we can modify the interpretation of what we want it to be. But if there's not elements we can measure today, then I think we call that out in the indicator, just to be very explicit about it. So then it just helps define it all with the intention and expectation that we're identifying data that can monitor the entire policy.
And maybe 5 years from now, 10 years from now, they'll be able to, there'd be a twist on it that they can figure out, okay, here's where we should go, or here's how it should be interpreted. And here's what the data has shown us that we really didn't expect it to show us. It won't tell us in the short run, but that will leave open a bookmark.
That was exactly what I was going to say. And is that highlight what we're not doing in the superintendent's interpretation. Although a piece of what you just said, Matt, was the Grit and resilience actually did strike some areas. So why not do both the motion of regulation and that survey bank if that captured the other section?
Yeah, so the conversation that we had back in March around this, and one of the nights, so the challenge with Grit is also our ability to essentially influence that. So with all of these other indicators, the nice thing is that there's a good alignment between essentially our ability to actually implement programming or changes in practice that are directly connected to us, and all the way down to, because we started using Panorama with our counselors to be able to assess what is the students need and what do you do differently. So when our schools are looking at this, they can go in and look using our actual curriculum at the elementary level, second step. They can go in and say, what lesson, if I want to influence this with the third grade, what are the things that I do? Grit doesn't have that same type of association. And then I think Mike was also talking about some of the critiques on a research basis that have been around Grit. So between those two, our ability to actually, because of the board policy, we're trying to have this nice alignment with all the way, through our buildings and our classrooms. It was one that had a very weak, kind of a weak link for our influence. Whereas, they look at emotion regulation and the way that it's framed. It's like, okay, we can work on that. So that was the other part of the conversation with why we decided not to, or why I started looking at other indicators. And I took it out, how to take it out of the survey, so we didn't ask it, so I also don't have available for monitoring.
And as we think about that specific policy, think about strengths and areas of growth, that really is about identifying goals for yourself and how do I work towards those. So I think there's places in our system that we do that. So that could be a different type of data that we are able to pull. But it would need to be a results, not a process. So it isn't that students are conducting goal setting, because that's a process. It's what's the outcome of that goal. And I'm not sure we have a consistent way to make that match between the goal setting processes and the outcome. So it's just something for us to think about.
So it might be interesting as we look at what is focus groups or interviews. Are those things we can explore a little bit with kids to figure out what things do fit here as possible things we want to pay attention to in conversation.
I want to just venture an interpretation for why collective identity is in there as well, because I do think it's the strength of like, you know, looking at your own identity as a strength, but I also feel like it's probably there because identity is very emotional for a lot of people. And this is, I mean, from the beginning of it, they talk about your own emotions and how your emotions influence your behavior. I do think that it's pretty crucial to be able to understand the correlation of like where you're coming from and who you are and why that drives you to potentially behave the way that you do or do not.
I hear you on that. But, and this is a bigger picture conversation. I mean, there are two pieces of identity. There's pieces you're born with and there's pieces you choose. And I fret over making it a source of strengths to be things that you can't change.
Nobody says that you can't change it.
I know, but it's just, there's a flip side to every piece of it. If empowering girls, does that mean we have to empower boys? If we need people to have pride in their race, does that mean we need whites to have pride in being white? It's something where I'm just worried about the way this is framed, that your collective identity is a strength, is something that cuts in ways I don't really think are productive. I mean, there are other pieces of it. Awareness of personal identity. I mean, does this mean that a kid who's still questioning their sexuality has not succeeded? I'm just worried that identity is a piece that I feel like the third bullet actually captured what you're getting at, which are the things that strengths you bring to the table from how you, from who your parents are, from how you were raised. But this second bullet, I'm still distressed that personal and collective identity is followed by strengths. My collective identity is a strength. I want to empower everyone to be proud of whatever identities they associate with, but to say that identity, generically, collective identity is a strength, is to endorse some identities that I've seen not behaving well in the last 10 years. And so I'm struggling with this. I really do feel like having pride in who you are, it depends on, are we just trying to say that every kid has to be proud of their race? That to me is actually a negative again. Kids need to be proud of who they are and where they come from and their background. But to say that they have to be proud of their race is something that there are an awful lot of kids where we're telling them to be proud of something, where we're actually trying to dissociate that from behavior. And so I'm this is one I'm distressed by, but it's just because your strengths and areas for growth, to me, personal collective identity is only one space that one gets strengths and weaknesses. I mean, if you ask me what's my personal identity, I identify as a scientist and then as someone with ADD, maybe an atheist, fast down the road. But those are things I have chosen to, rather than things that I was born. I don't really, very far down my list is identifying as a man. I am a man, but that's not my identity. And that's something I have chosen. I have chosen not to make that primary my identity. So it's something I'm just, this is a complicated space, and the state did not do us a favor by putting it into this clause about.
To do with the SEO.
So I dug into the benchmarks and then actually looking at the indicators for this to try to figure out like what is it really, what is it, what do they mean by that? Because they're essentially using that as a shorthand for something that takes a whole page to explain. But so if I look at like the how they describe the middle school is a nice kind of accessible language. So a middle school student would be I can recognize my own perspectives, values, and assets, as well as understanding the values that are part of my own culture and the benefits these values brings to my community. So that's how they unpacked this notion of collective identity, with essentially that self-awareness. So given that this is in the proposed interpretation, I think we could rework that language fairly easily. And again, the more we unpack kind of these specific benchmarks, can give us more opportunities to think about, well, what are the opportunities space which we can essentially. That's that.
Yeah.
Trying to really unpack.
No, actually,
that
thank you.
identity. That's what makes sense.
Yeah, unpacking it's a good idea.
That language describes better than
Oh, it's been my casual interpretation.
we have about 20 minutes or so, and I want to make sure we have, if there's more discussion needed around each of the indicators, interpretation indicators, that we get to those and then identify next steps in terms of when the board wants to see this for a first reading, or if we're ready for a first reading and need to bring it back for a study session.
So just quickly, there were a couple of things that came up in the study session that, and it's on page 7, remember. So we discussed possibility of using the civics course. We actually monitor that in R2 as civics course completion. So I did not include that at this point in time, since the board is monitoring that in someplace else. We also talked, there was an interest around, I think Director Stewart said, well, what, can we survey students to gain their perspective on their peers, kind of skill sets? That's not we're sticking with essentially kind of the data sets that are available with Panorama. It's not that's available to us right now. Similarly for teachers or staff doing the same sort of thing. That's not, Panorama does have staff, a tool for staff, but it's individualized to students, which I believe for the purpose of monitoring R3, quite a big ask of our system to have teachers do that for every individual student. It's relevant that I kind of collect. Yeah. So yeah. So those are, I kind of wanted to capture them in notes of these were things that were discussed and opportunities, and but at this time did not listen to the indicators.
We want to actually release some time for teachers to teach. What do you need to hit?
I have no other comments on other policies right now or the indicators. I would be comfortable having this. I don't want to get too far ahead of everyone else here, but I would be comfortable with going for a first reading with some of the minor tweaks that we discussed.
I do still want to reiterate that I do think that it's a problem that the only monitoring method is one survey. So it would be nice to see, even if it's an idea that we could discuss, for another method of some way of measuring some of this data, because I do think there is a subset of the population that's not voluntarily taking a survey that we're not hearing from. The survey is only offered in 2 languages.
This English and Spanish.
English and Spanish. And yeah, I feel like we're not doing anybody a favor by leaving out whatever portion of our student population. If there was a way to capture kind of that missing component, it'd be great. I don't have the answer for how, but that is a continuing concern for me. That's the only method to monitor is this one survey.
To that point, you had already mentioned the idea of putting things in where we know we're not. That becomes part of the longer conversation about, well, what other ways can we monitor that don't place too much burden on the system? I mean, this is the right way to go. And I think you're absolutely right. When this comes back as it develops, it's not something where we're done, we'll see it in a year. It's something where hopefully we'll have conversations around, well, and here are the gaps, now that you flagged them, what are you thinking about? We don't have to pick something right now, we do need to get this policy into production, so to speak. But when we would come back to it would be a really valuable piece to know. So when can we expect to be revisiting technology gaps?
So I think here's the options today. The options today are to move this forward to a first reading, so that by, and Matt, tell me if I'm incorrect in what I'm saying here, that a first reading, a second reading, we adopt policy, indicators and interpretation for monitoring in August. If we want to do the work of kind of going through each and finding data that directly aligns and we consistently apply year over year, I think more than likely we're not monitoring R3 for this cycle. And so I think that's where we are. And so because that work, now that we have policy language generally agreed to, because we could do a first reading of the policy, move the policy forward, and then do the work around interpretation indicators based on the data. So data set.
So I guess that's Ray's question. So if we want to monitor it in August, the data sets we would have available to us right now in Panorama, that data.
I guess I would say move forward with monitoring in August, and putting that in, because that gives us a starting point from where to go. And then it could be further discussions. You know what, this gives us this good solid piece of what we need. These questions are still outstanding.
And I think we're close enough. I mean, really, this is something where at least getting a framework for a major revamp is good. There's going to be a lot of tinkering in the next couple of years, but getting it based on done for August, I think is absolutely appropriate, even if it's an incomplete list.
I also think the data would be really fascinating. I mean, that's part of recovery of COVID and everything that's happening sooner than later. I think would be more beneficial.
Work on additional.
Media foods. Across the board for all of them. There's multiple questions in those settings across all results. So it's not just for
Senior access.
Hmm?
Senior access.
group exits.
What are you gonna do with that?
Right now.
Okay,
Judith,
Anything else
Culmination
on,
of all of this, right? So see what it just.
on results 3?
I'm missing a positive.
Email.
Yeah.
Email
what was that?
There's a missing apostrophe. The second
email-
motions is
Don't
about
email, it's in.
Yeah.
Yes, there it is.
Thanks for the work on it.
Yeah.
The only other thing that I would add is I'm fine with moving forward with and indicating that we are looking for ways to monitor. But I also think that it would be very useful when we get our data from the Panorama survey about what percentage of our student body did participate in the survey, and if it is at all possible to get demographic information so that we can make sure that we know if there is a certain group that is underrepresented or overrepresented.
We'll put that for you.
And
Yeah.
so just for you, in the updated, the response rates are actually from this spring. And you can see, so I updated the 2022 response rates by school.
Is it possible
I'll
to
have
get
to work.
demographic?
I'll have to work with them to see if I don't have the ability to view demographic data on response rates, given the way that their platform works.
I'm intrigued at looking at that. We have some as low as 6%.
Zero.
And well.
Yeah, I felt the conscientious.
Is that because they just chose not, it seems like there's either a data error of some kind, or they just chose not to really do it.
they didn't do it, and we'll have to follow up to understand why. And then we had some schools where the response rates were lower than typical. Look back at historically, some of our schools are higher. And it tends to be more of our sector. So it's just offered. Kids chose not to. High school students chose not to take them this year. Or what? So, and this is literally this data just came through. So,
I'd just like to echo Director Choi's request to have the demographic data. And I think, Dr. Holland, you proposed that it was be in the preamble of the report
Any demographic data, just do a preamble around what,
for response rate.
yes.
Okay, yeah, that sounds good.
May I suggest as an appendix?
I was trying to think about one versus the other. What's your thinking?
I would do the appendix.
Why?
Because that's where it makes sense that it should go, because that's additional information in which to explain it.
You think parents will actually wade through it?
Well, it's for, I mean, the fund reports for the board to review.
Either way,
I don't know.
We'll find a great place to put it.
And we'll disagree with
Maybe it'll be both. You never know.
if you do that, you solve it.
Well, and I would be greedy and I would ask for demographic by question, but that's just me potentially, so.
So,
Only if you look at
ethnicity,
the period.
I do. I just don't, there's just limitations. So I'm looking, able to view what their system is set up to.
Okay. Thank you.
All right, thanks.
so,
So that's the only item on the agenda for the study session tonight. Following tonight's study session, the board will have a meeting at 7 p.m. here in the boardroom. So we are adjourned.